My name is Mike Tran. I'm the creator of the Asian menswear brand on Instagram. It started off as a way to kind of change the way Asian men are kind of perceived in media. As you guys know, for the longest time, Asian men have kind of always been portrayed as like meek or the support cast or the nerdy type or the guy that never gets the girl. So I created Asian menswear to kind of combat those stereotypes and kind of show Asian Americans as well as non-Asian Americans that Asian guys are a lot different than that. Like I always felt like the Asian men that I see through television, through media, weren't the same Asian men that I knew in my own life or myself. So I thought the best way to kind of change those things is to show you real life examples of Asian men doing all these things that you wouldn't see them doing in mainstream media.
Welcome to the Vietnamese. I'm your host, Kenneth Nguyen. Being part of a culture of nearly 100 million Vietnamese people in the world today comes with a lot of pain, proud history, and privilege. Join me as I highlight and explore the Vietnamese experience from all over the world.
And thank you for the work that you do. It's phenomenal. I really enjoy the content. What does it mean to be Vietnamese to you nowadays?
The funny thing about like Asian menswear and I guess my journey into trying to make impact in the Asian American community is that as I'm building Asian menswear, I'm also learning so much about myself and my history and my family's history. So for me, it's also like I'm growing along as I'm learning about all these things. And I guess what it means to me to be Vietnamese American is to be a survivor, someone who, makes something out of nothing. I didn't really understand all this until I was way older, maybe in my mid 20s, where I started to really ask questions of my parents of like where they were from. And when I started to learn those things, I started to connect those dots of how they grew up in their journey to America. And I started to see a lot of connections through that. So yeah, if I could say what it means to be Vietnamese American is to be a survivor, a fighter, someone who makes something out of nothing.
Very cool. It's a great answer. What kinds of businesses did you get into? I think you're an entrepreneur, right? What kind of businesses did you grow up doing?
So I did a little bit. So I took this from my dad. So my dad, for as long as I could remember, he's always had his own business at home. He actually fixes watches. So it's something that he learned in Vietnam, and he's made it. He's made a living for our family doing that. And he's always been at home working. So I've always kind of had like the entrepreneurial spirit. And so, right in high school, I always wanted to become an entrepreneur. I wanted to solve something. I wanted to bring value to people. So I started off as very young selling like iPhone cases on eBay. I would buy them for like pennies and then resell them in America. And then I started just dabbling in different things. And at the time, in my early teens, I collected a lot of sneakers, collectible sneakers where, as a lot of people may know, like Jordans, the resale value goes up when you buy them because, they're a collector's item. So I started a price guide, a sneaker price guide where I would give you the market value so that if you're looking to sell or you're looking to buy, you get something that would be a fair price and not just someone putting a random number and then you deciding, oh, this is a good price or not. So I created basically a price guide, a physical price guide book, not knowing how to make a book or anything. I did that myself. And that became successful. And then from there, I built a mobile app that did the same thing, but could give you updated market values in real time. So I've always kind of dabbled into it. Eventually, I went back into corporate America, into sales. And then this is kind of where I kind of had that itch again. I wanted to do something more impactful. And that's where Asian Menswear was born. It was born out of me just going on social media, trying to find out, what's something nice I could wear. And I noticed all the guys that I was getting inspiration from were guys that weren't Asian. And I was always wondered why that was. It's usually like white guys, black guys, Latin guys, but I would never see any Asian guys. So I was like, why is that, right? I feel like we would connect better if someone like looked like us was also wearing something that was inspiring to us or like something that I think I would look good in that. This guy kind of has the same body as me, same face, and it'll be easier for you to connect with. So I started Asian Menswear kind of like as a fashion inspiration, and it sort of just grew from there. It kind of expanded and really opened my eyes into more problems than just like style or fashion. And it's Asian Menswear kind of evolved from that.
Yeah, because when I started tracking sort of your IG page, a few years ago, I thought about that. I was like, Asian menswear is a very specific niche, and I'm sure that came from somewhere. There's an origin story from the creator that probably delved into the problem of not being represented in fine clothes. But that being said, though, I feel like, and I'm wondering that when you started it, did you think that you were going to eventually cover broader topics?
No, it was just like a very small, you're exactly right. It was a very small problem. And then I was posting and I was getting more involved with the Asian American community because before then I didn't really have that connection. I grew up mostly around like Hispanics, black whites, but I didn't really have a large Asian American community. And social media was really where I started to get that exposure and learn about these issues I never even knew about. So as I'm connecting with Asian creators and they're posting these things and then connecting with Asian centric pages like Neck Shark or Asians Never Die, then I'm like learning about all these things and it started to become like this community, also a learning opportunity for me. So you're right. It's changed a lot. And actually, so the Asian menswear is very specific. So now that it's changed so much, I'm actually moving away from Asian menswear. And then I've made the decision that it's more of like a lifestyle thing, right? Like where you can talk about culture, you can talk about Asian men being successful, you can talk about how to style for Asian men, you can talk about how to style your hair for Asian hair, right? Our hair is much different, but we never had a resource like that. So it's something closer to like how GQ used to be for men. We weren't really ever represented in GQ at all. So that's kind of the direction I want to take. So for now, I think it embodies what I want Asian men's or AM is going to be in the future. So it's weird. It's like a personal growth, but along with the personal growth is like the brand also goes along with it. So it's pretty cool.
So are you going to rebrand the name of it?
Exactly. It's for now, it's just going to stand for AM. I'm removing the menswear is going to slowly disappear because it's not just like suits. It's not just like high. And that's not something that I'm interested in as well. And I know if it's something that I want to continue doing, it's something I have to enjoy. So I think AM just makes more sense.
And will AM still stand for Asian menswear? Or what?
No, so for now, I haven't figured it all out, but I think it's just going to be AM. But for those who know, it does stand for, it does represent for Asian men. So we just keep it that. But I think we're moving away from just menswear altogether, or like menswear specific, and more so just a lifestyle.
Yeah, because as I'm consuming the page, the content of the page over the last few years, I thought the same thing too. I'm like, this guy is going to evolve. It's going to evolve one day. It's going to morph into something more dynamic, more broad than just menswear because of the content that you've posted. And I am very excited for the change.
Yeah, I hope so. That's the reason why I took a step back, because I felt like as I was posting, it didn't feel right because I knew this wasn't the long-term vision that I have for AM now. So I had to take a pause, right? I had to take a pause and then make that move to go towards something, like you said, more dynamic, more broad, more general, that I think would be more valuable and helpful to the Asian American community. So.
The crazy thing is when I look at you, you're a very handsome young Vietnamese man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
First of all, I want to put that out there. You don't seem like the kind of guy that would have issues sort of in the wide world of the mainstream, global mainstream. You seem like you would, you're very even keeled. And do you think that you suffer? That's a heavy word, but do you think that you are afflicted? That's another heavy word.
No, please throw it at me.
With any of these,
I know where you're getting at. So I hope this is what you're getting at. But
go for it. Go for it.
Are you talking about like suffering in like putting myself out there more, or is that what you're meaning?
Well, yeah, getting to that. It's,
Please.
are you afflicted or suffering from the way you look at yourself as it appears in the mainstream? Because I look at you and I'm like, oh, very confident. And I've seen, obviously your content, you appear very confident and assured. Now, does that come from some sort of source pain that you've experienced in your life growing up? Or is it something that you embody and you're like, you want to help out other Asian men succeed in that way?
Okay, got it. That's so funny that you say like the confidence, because a lot of times it is not confidence at all, at least from what I know or I feel sometimes. And that's also a reason why I don't put my face out there too often. I think it ties a lot. I don't know what it is, but I don't know what I've noticed in the Asian American community. We're very private as people, or just, I don't want to say everyone, but it seems to be a common thing where we don't like to talk about ourselves. We like to kind of stay behind in the shadows, because a lot of times when we do try to talk about ourselves or put ourselves out there, it almost seems like we're boasting in a weird way, But I'm slowly learning that talking about what you're doing and talking about yourself a little bit isn't boasting, but a lot of times it's a way for you to inspire others. And if people don't know your story, and people don't know what you're doing, then they don't know. And I'm slowly trying to move away from that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think I don't know. I feel like sometimes my upbringing affected I guess my confidence perceived to the world. Like how I'm perceived to the world was I don't know. It suffered from how I grew up. If that makes
It makes perfect sense. And I think that it is rooted and tied into a Confucius upbringing, a Confucian culture, where we are really taught to be humble and
Absolutely.
not show how well we think of ourselves, not our authentic selves. So
Yeah.
it clashes with this Western idea of put it out there, you are what you are and just be authentic. And we do have a problem with talking about our authentic true selves because it's cross bred into this idea of, Confucian humility.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And we're trying to deprogram that as we're living in the US. But if you go to Asia, I don't think they have that problem. Or I
Right.
mean, I might be wrong, but I feel like my Asian counterparts in Asia don't feel the need to kind of break free from that Confucian
Right.
humble lifestyle.
Because it works over there because everyone's doing it, right? And I think I absolutely, so I just started to like uncover this. Like I've always wondered, like, why am I always like acting this way? And I always feel like it's restricting my ability to like, I feel like a lot of times with AM now, Asian Menswear, like I haven't been able to grow it because of those same beliefs.
Wow.
And it's hurt the brand a lot. And even like myself, it's very frustrating because I can't get past it.
Okay. On a mechanical level, let's talk about that. Let's break that down. Like
Sure.
you say that it's holding you back. It's holding you back from the development. Like in what way? Is it like the decision to post certain content? Is it like a direction that you feel you're limited because of this inner voice?
Absolutely. So the content, right? People have told me, dude, you just need to post yourself. You need to be more out there so people can learn about your story. They can be more invested in, besides the brand, the person behind it. And because of, so let me go back. So I used to have anxiety, or I still do. Being in front of the camera, speaking, just, oh man, it's just, even today, I have my own podcast. Like when I speak with people, I get this nervousness that it's so weird. And I can't, I'm getting better. And this is the reason why I went into sales. I tried to do all these things to kind of get outside of it, but it used to be so bad where I could feel my heart pumping, and it's not even anything serious. It could be just me speaking in front of 3 other people. and I had this thing, and couldn't understand what it was. I don't know why I had this anxiety, but I think it ties into back where, like, you just kind of want to be in the background. You don't want to make the noise. You try to just be invisible so that you don't do anything bad. And I think I'm still struggling with that. And with Asian men, yeah, with Asian menswear, that really hurt too. Like, there's a lot of times where I think it also ties into being a perfectionist. What are you posting? What is this word? What is this sentence?
Mm.
This sentence doesn't look good. Someone might perceive it this way. You start thinking about all these things, and then you get yourself into a place where you're like, oh, I don't want to post anymore because it seems, like this, it over stresses you to a point where you just, it becomes too much of a workload just to do something like a simple post or a simple, I don't know. I don't know if I can explain that, if I'm explaining.
No, it's very clear. What you're saying is very, very clear, and how you explain it is very clear. I think a lot of creators, a lot of artists can really empathize with what you're saying, because I think that the muscle to do all of that expression work, it's not something that our families kind of conditioned us to do, right?
Yeah.
We are not conditioned to, okay, let's talk about education. I think in Asia, even today, the education is rote memory. Like, you got to remember things. You got to, like, memorize things. It's not asking you to think outside the box of what you're memorizing and synthesize that information to go, okay, all right, well, here's my 2 cents. Here's my take on what I'm reading and learning about. I think the curriculum in Vietnam, because I'm close to some professors, is that we are not trained, and we're not conditioned to speak up, and we're not pushed to express what we truly feel. And that bleeds through all of the men and women that come out of that culture and society.
Yeah, I know, as I'm learning more, like, I'm, like I said, like, I see my family history, and I see so many connections to it. And even today, something as simple as someone telling me, just do it. Like, it's so easy, but it's so difficult for me to do it. And I'm like, I know it is that easy, but for some weird reason, there's something it's just like, like you said, like that self-talk, or like, then, like, not being able to condition to be able to do that. Right. So,
I mean, it's like this is a very basic analogy, but it's like, that's like telling somebody who's in their late 20s to go out and play basketball very well, right? If you didn't play basketball ever growing up, and now somebody's telling you, hey, go out and do some, do some work on the court, it's just very difficult. And not being born into families where we're playing sports and, conditioning that muscle to go out and express. And all right, let me ask you this. How many Asian men are really looking into the camera and giving their thoughts? Like, you see mainstream white America, there's so many guys like just looking into the camera and they're just going and ranting. Oh,
yeah, that's like impossible. I had this conversation. That's so funny. I had this conversation with Dennis Yu. He works at Spotify, but he brought up about, like, the bamboo ceiling and the model minority, and how, like, the Eastern and Western cultures clash. So it's so funny that you bring all that up, and we covered a lot of that, where, again, we're not taught to give our opinions on things and express how we feel. So it bleeds into corporate America. And that's the reason why we have so many Asians staying within, like, that level, because we don't do that necessary step in Western culture to show that we're, because there's just this confusion, right? You just do good work, and we're kind of expected to move, but that's not how it works. Like, you have to, even if you don't really know what you're doing, I guess, then if you speak up, you're going to be seemingly the expert versus someone who may know more, but because they're holding back, they're not talking, they're perceived as, like they wouldn't have it to move up to that next level.
I suspect the reason we don't have stand-up comedians in the Vietnamese in Vietnam is because of this very thing. Damn, man, how
you're right. Wow.
Fucking frightening is it to just go up and fucking just go off, or develop a 1 hour special. That takes a tremendous amount of courage to do that.
That just sounds exhausting mentally and even physically, probably. That's what I would think. And you're right. That's exactly, wow. There aren't, unless they're so far removed from,
Yeah.
that's the only way. If they're like a fourth generation, but that's even rare. I don't even know many Vietnamese Americans that are that far removed from, from Vietnam.
Well, I'm going to throw a shout out to these guys, this group of comedians. Last weekend, I went to go see 6 or 7 of these Vietnamese, second generation Vietnamese guys, probably your age, in their 20s and 30s. They threw a production called Embarrassed by Night. It's a spin on Paris.
Paris by Night.
Yeah, shout out to those guys, Fred Lay, Alex Zung, a few of these guys that put together this comedy night where it was just Vietnamese American comics. And man, I am so proud of these fucking guys, man.
They killed it.
Yeah, they killed it. And some of them are, working in LA at the Comedy Store. Some of them are, opening for Jay Leno. And, they're making inroads to this world. But the ability to talk into a camera, just straight talk into a camera and speak your thoughts, you and I think we need to evolve into that. I know it's frightening, right?
Yeah. I was going to ask you, like, was your journey into podcasting smooth too? I mean, did you do any other like speaking gigs, or was this something that, I don't know?
I'd love to answer that. After 9/11, okay, so when I graduated college in 2000, at 9/11, it was like a year after, I was like, all right, I'm going to stop in the film industry. I was like working as an agent assistant, and I stopped, and I was like, I took classes, and I'd been singing maybe on and off for 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. But there is a lot of revelatory things in that experience. So I pursued it for a good 5 years. I went to school for a year for vocal training, and then in those classes at MI, which is the Musicians Institute in LA, there are these classes that force you to think outside of just singing. For example, there is a class on improv, right? So there's like 12 people in a circle, and you are, there's a song that they assume everybody knows, like the song Route 66. So they'll take that song and they'll make us improvise, taking the lyrics out and then just saying and singing whatever the fuck you feel, using your own words and writing the melody however you want, and then bending the rhythm, bending the beats. That was an eye opener for me. So we had these exercises, and then I would go on stage and sing. And so that would be my only experience for those 5 years. But I drank a lot. I drank a lot of vodka, because I could pour vodka into a clear bottle, like a water bottle, on stage, and people would think that I'm just taking a drink of water. At the end of the night, I'd kill like 8 ounces of vodka, and I'd be so smashed that. But that was the problem, because I couldn't grow if I was always smashed. I couldn't be in real time and allow myself to grow into a comfortable, uncomfortable position, right? So,
right. So you're using the alcohol to kind of get you. Oh, I see.
To numb the discomfort. And if you're numbing the discomfort, you're not growing as a singer, as an artist, as somebody who's, your instrument is to feel, right? And you can argue that, alcohol does take you to funny places where it takes out the inhibition. But at the same time, I think that was a big, so like after 5 years and that amount of drinking really made me go, this is not going to be for me, because I don't have it. I just thought I never had it. But maybe if I didn't drink and I forced myself to grow.
You work through it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So knowing that, and then going into podcasting, I was confronting the butterflies, the heavy butterflies of turning on the camera and talking to a guest. Now, I've recorded over 200 episodes now, and I'm getting better at this, but I'm telling you and I this, that our next evolution is to look into a camera and do single episodes I'm telling you this because I'm like trying to talk myself into doing it. Is to express our own thoughts and give our own, like,
That's
commentary.
next level. That's next level.
Who else is doing it?
That's what I was saying. Like, there's so many different like industries and fields that lack Asian American men or just Asian Americans in general. Like, and I'm starting to see that, and I think it's sad because that's the reason why we don't have role models. There's so many great individuals out there, but because they don't like to talk about themselves, they don't like to put themselves out there, we never know about them. And now it's sort of slowly changing, but now it all connects, right? It's because of how we grew up, and we want to be humble. We don't want to put ourselves out there, but we need to do that so that the next generation has examples of people that they can become, and that's extremely important.
My suspicion is podcasting is a gateway drug for us. It's a gateway to being able to express ourselves, but we're still doing it under the crutch of sitting in an interview. You have a co-host, right?
Yeah.
So there's a triangulation of information. The ball is in the air. You can still think, right? While the ball is in the air, you can still think, move, right?
It's next level to go, just to go off script and just go. Script. Yeah. I have never, that's why like editing is I think that's my crutch, to be able to edit the podcast episode, obviously to make it streamlined and easier to listen. But I use that to help, remove maybe things that I think too much about that may have been good or not, but because I'm so hard on myself, I guess I might remove it. I don't want to maybe seem this way or that way. That could be my crutch now that we're talking about it. If I'm honest.
Now take it out. Go raw. Just put it out there, man.
That's the thing that's been sitting in the back of my mind. Just go raw. Just leave it all out there. Yeah.
Fuck polishing it.
Yeah.
When I cross the line in a recording podcast, that's when I take it out. Like, I know that I crossed the line politically or said some shit that I look back and go, wait, this could be read in a different way. And that's rare, but I will do that if it's like, if I know I crossed the line. But for the most part, I just try to like put it out there and just brace myself for like, it's the cringe that you just...
It's the cringe. Absolutely. I know the cringe. And I feel like it's again, I think we're harder on ourselves than we should be, because a lot of times it's always you think it's really bad, and then someone else listens to it. I don't see anything wrong with that. Like, I think it comes down to like that perfectionist mentality, like making sure to be perfect in any way that you can. And I don't know.
I look at you and I see a very symmetrical face. I see voice that's beautifully coming out, projecting, and it's a pleasant voice to hear. So we owe it to ourselves to get to that next level of evolution, to look into the camera and just be able to comment and make commentary, because that is sort of the way to really push through this next. Like I said, I'm telling you this because I know I got to talk to I have all the equipment in the world, I have all the know-how, but I just don't have the willpower to sit and do
I say we do it. I say we after the podcast we do some accountability and just
I'm down.
Try to do that and get it going, because I know for a fact what you're telling me now is what I need to do too.
Yeah.
Like, on the back of my mind, like sitting there, like it needs to be done. And I always tell people, like, if you do have your own business or your own brand or whatever it is, it only goes as far as you as a person goes. So if you lack so many things, your business or your thing will suffer for it too. Like
Totally.
I've always learned, like you only go as far as you're willing to take yourself to. So I love that you said that, because that's always been a thing. And I'm going back and forth. I'm conflicted all the time about, being able to be my authentic self and just speak how I would with a friend. And and to me, I feel like I'm a likable guy. Like, I got good friends. I like, what's there to be afraid of, like, just, I don't know.
And I'm also willing to bet that you have a lot of shit to say. I'm willing to bet that you have
probably.
You have a lot of thoughts. You have a lot of.
I'm pretty, in my own closed circle. I'm very, I would say I'm very opinionated.
Yeah.
Also have a lot to say about a lot of things too. That's very true. That's very true. And I would even say the image that people see on Instagram or even online is another another level, not even the level that needs that I feel like if the true face would come out, it would be more of a connection with
Yeah.
the audience. I truly believe it's like the Japanese thing where it's like they have three faces, right? They have the face they put out, whereas the face they have the friends, and then the third is the face that they're when they're alone or something like that.
Mm.
I forget what they call it, but
I mean, you are working in content and we're ingesting content. We're ingesting our content. We're ingesting other people's content. We are not robots to not have thoughts about the content we're ingesting and the synthesizing process of a culmination of all those thoughts. It's impossible for us not to have these opinions about the world, you know? And then it's like, take it a next step further. If we don't have opinions about the world that we're ingesting or that we're processing, other fucking people are making these thoughts for us. They're creating, they're putting their thoughts out there for us. It's not our thoughts. And I don't know. I mean, other than the big comedians like Ronnie Chang and, maybe Simu, he's not a comedian, but there's no really people that are talking into these cameras and making these monologues or these thought exercises.
And you know what I think doesn't help at all too? It's because, and again, it goes back to that mentality where you're supposed to be buttoned up, you're supposed to be polished, right? And it's like a crab in a bucket mentality. So I think the other fear is that knowing how we are and how other Asian Americans are, it makes it even more scary to speak out because you know how they're going to think. So that's why a lot of times when you do see an Asian American speak out, parts of the Asian American community are disown them. We don't want nothing to do with that person. And that's what they do so fast. And I think that's a scary thing for knowing that that's going to happen, right? Like Simu, he's outspoken. He's probably the most outspoken we've seen, but compare him to other, celebrities and things, is nothing. He's mild,
Totally.
in the way that he speaks. But I've seen the comments of people who are like, "Oh, he shouldn't have said that," and they burn him. And it's like, and then when you do that, it's like, you want us to speak out, but what do you want us to do? It's like, it's sad. It's really sad because some people keep that mindset and they don't deviate from that, And I think that's a big issue in the Asian American community, at least in my opinion. Not entirely, but like obviously there's a part that we know about that do that. So
well,
I think that's definitely
the burn in the comments are real because sometimes we do cross the line. I make mistakes all the time privately, get called out by my friends or people I work with, and I make these huge mistakes with toxic masculine, thoughts. They're in here. They're not cured or they're not non-existent. They exist in here. But can we have a space where we do our best and then as it's being corrected, we get better, right?
Yeah, right. Because how else are you going to fix it, right? I mean, it has to go through, sometimes we need to go through that evolution to get you into the right place because not everyone's going to come out with the perfect answers or the way to think about certain things. So I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. How did the podcast come along? How did it get birthed into the world?
So I was doing a lot of just like static posts, just a single post highlighting different individuals that a lot of us didn't know about, like Asian Americans doing all these different things. And so the podcast, I wanted to be able to go deeper. So aside from talking about the highlights, I wanted to show people the backstory because then when you hear about how they grew up, you're like, wow, that's how I grew up. And then this is where this person ended up. And I wanted to deliver that. And also a part of it was also to be able to one day speak my mind fully and have that medium to do so. Because again, like I told you, I was painfully nervous my first episode, or as soon as the mic is in my face, I'm already breathing heavy. If you listen to my first episode, you can tell right away, like I was speaking extremely fast. I can't explain. It's so much different now, but I still have a lot to improve on. But again, that's just me knowing that if you're uncomfortable with something, that just means that it's an opportunity for you to improve, right? It's not a message to run away, but a message for you, a signal that you should probably do that. And by practice, one day after another, you'll get better, and eventually it'll become second nature to you. Just like every other person that I've watched on YouTube, and they said, you would have never imagined they were this person, and then now they're here. It's because they put the work in, day out.
Yeah.
And eventually, right? Nothing happens in one day. It's a day times 1,000.
Absolutely.
And then you get to that place. Like you said, like the conditioning, our parents conditioned us in a certain way. It's going to take time to reverse that conditioning by practicing the other way until you get used to it and it becomes normal. So that's something I try to preach on the podcast to help any, just guys or whoever listens to the podcast to, like, whatever you are today is not going to be who you are. It's just up to you to change that. And that starts with doing the uncomfortable, right? So.
Absolutely. And I think that the long term podcast environment in the Asian American community or in Vietnam, or people are not used to long form yet, but in the white mainstream, people after years now are like, I'm addicted to white mainstream podcasts. There's a lot that I can't wait to get on and listen, and I hate it when it's like 45 minutes. I need that shit 90 to 2 hours now.
Oh, wow. I thought you meant like, I don't like it when it's that long.
No,
Wow.
I need long episodes. And I talk to like my brother, and we talk about how there was like this podcast, Lex Friedman, he had somebody on for 6 hours. And my brother's like, 6 hours was not enough for him.
Oh my God.
Because think about it. If you're a fan of somebody and this is the first time they get on and they tell they're like the most interesting woman on the planet to your mind, and you're a big fan, don't you want to get every little bit of nook and cranny if they're so interesting? You don't want just a half an hour BBC or CNN soundbite. You want like I want the full tidal wave to hit me for hours and hours and hours so I can ingest what this person embodies.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's just the way. And I don't think that the Asian American listener is used to that yet, because
I think it's because we don't have enough Asian American creators.
Exactly.
And it's starting to happen. Because I think I remember a statistic. It was like 75% or some, what was it? The number was crazy, but it was white Americans listening mainly. But I think you're right. I think eventually everyone else will catch up. And if you're an Asian American creator, that's like an opportunity for you to be one of those voices, especially with what we know of how Asian Americans are. So if you're willing to break through that barrier, you're going to be one of those voices for sure. When that time comes where Asian Americans catch up to the same numbers that white America has.
Totally. And there's some cool ass motherfuckers out there. Cool ass Asian motherfuckers out there. There's a lot. And, it's just going to take time to get to them. But eventually I think we will break through. I wanted to comment on, I scrolled through your IG and I studied it. And sometimes I feel like you apologize for like not releasing episodes, regularly. I'm like, fuck that. You to release whenever you release whenever you want, like it's a free medium. You do whatever you want. And but I now understand who you are, because you want things to be very curated and perfect coming out. So it takes you a little bit longer to deliver a podcast because you want to clean it up. But I say, fuck it. I say, just go.
Leo hates it. My co-host. He's like, dude, just post it. He's always like kind of pushing me a little bit here and there. And like, I know it too. And I hate that sometimes he tells me and I know I should do it. But then a part of me is just still like stuck kind of in my own ways. And so sometimes that could be frustrating. You know what you need to do, but sometimes you just don't do it. And that becomes very frustrating. So you're absolutely right. I do apologize. And I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what where I credit that behavior, I guess. But I feel like, I think even in the Asian American community, we're always saying sorry. People are like, don't say sorry. Just do it.
Yeah.
Or like, don't ever apologize. Like, I think that's something that I always see in movies. Like, just don't apologize. What's the point? Like, don't ever apologize for something unless it's like you need to apologize. But for things like that, don't say sorry. Like I could be walking and then and then like someone has to move away from him. I'm saying sorry, like, well, I mean, it just, it's not that serious. Like, there's no need to say
Mhm.
sorry. Like, I don't know. It's, again, I think that's the conditioning
Yeah.
that I'm learning now. I'm being aware of it now, that needs to be reversed. It needs to, especially in this society, in this culture, those things need to, there needs to be an adjustment, I guess. Um,
But let's face it, you're a nice guy. You're just
yeah,
a very nice person. Yeah. Could tell.
that's probably why. Yeah, I know. And even with like, and even with business, like it's so hard for me to even ask for money and things like that. Cause it's like, I see it as, oh, I don't want to ask. It's like kind of embarrassing almost, even though there's a business side of it. I'm offering value here, but then because I kind of know this person, I don't want to, like it flows into those things too. And it's, I'm learning that I need to start reversing those things. It's weird.
I'm afflicted with the same thing.
Oh, wow.
Very same thing. So many people have said, why are you not monetized? Why you don't just go for it? You have the numbers to do. And I still feel like I got.
What's your reason? Tell me your reasons. I want to see if this is
It's
something that.
imposter syndrome. It's like I feel like I'm not good enough. Just
Mhm.
real talk. I feel like I'm not good enough. I keep putting this arrival fallacy on top of it, right? Like, oh, once I get to 100 episodes,
And I'll start charging or something like that.
yeah, and I blew past that, and then. Chef Two is somebody that we know together. In the early days, he was like, man, your numbers, are there. You should do it. And he's like, yeah, when my numbers were X amount, I was able to go out and raise money for content production. And he said, you can do that. And I said, okay,
Oh, wow, for content production, I gotta talk to you too.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
He is amazing, and he's very generous with his help
Yeah.
and information. So
I'm so
shout
happy
out
to
to
see
Chef.
him growing. He's really just found his stride, and he's doing so well. I'm so happy
He
for him.
is, and he's not afflicted with that thing that we have.
You are, or suffering from, right? Because he's out there now.
He's
I
out there.
know. I'm pretty sure he developed it too. Because I know there was probably a point where he was also like that, but he knew, no, I gotta. Because now he's one of the outspoken guys, for sure. So
Yeah.
that's so
Oh,
funny.
he is definitely. Now that's one guy that's really out there doing it. Leader of the pack, just speaking his mind, speaking his truth, and being authentic to the world.
Yeah, that's so funny. We got guys. Yeah, literally right in front of our faces, right?
But I'm like you. I'm like, okay, all right. When I get to 500 episodes, I'll maybe, or you know what? I'll just wait for people to come to me. And I'm like,
That's the mistake I did. I did the same thing. So I quit my job when things started, obviously taking off. And my whole thing was just create the content, create the value, and then the business side will come. It never, I mean, here twinkle here and there, but it never came. And now I'm learning, like, I have to be the aggressor. I have to be the assertive one to reach out to, because a lot of times people are busy, man. They're not going to be worried about your thing or seeing what you're doing. And then, oh, it's this perfect time. I should reach out to him now. Like, you have to have that mentality to go make space, go be assertive, go make sure you're on people's minds. So now that's kind of what I'm learning after the years that I've been working on, the AM brand. It's like, I need to be out there. And if I have value to give, and even if it's not good enough, like, all I'm doing is stating a fact, right? I think this is my conversation with Dennis Yu about like the bamboo stealing and all that. He told me they do an exercise at Spotify with underrepresented workers, like things that they're trying to get them to get past. And one of the ways that he was telling me that a lot of times Asian Americans, or just anyone in minorities in general, they think too much. So if, let's say, they have something to speak about, they are like, oh, should I say it in this way? Ooh, what are they going to think if I do that?
wow.
And then he basically said, just say it as if it's a fact, and that's it. You can't control how people perceive you. At the end of the day, it's just imagine it's a fact. Someone could perceive it as a good thing. Someone could perceive it. It doesn't matter, because you can't control that. What you're trying to do is control people's perceptions, and that's never going to work, because
Right.
people come from different backgrounds. You could say, I'm a nice guy. Someone could perceive it as, oh, this guy is doing this and that. But it's like, there's nothing you can do. So you might as well just say it and not worry so much about how people perceive it, because only you'll know how you perceived it, right? Or how you want it to be perceived. So that's what he said. He said, instead of just worrying about what you're going to say, just say it, and then think of it as like you're stating a fact. That's it. Just think of it as a fact, and that's it.
And you know what's crazy, Mike, is that there are creators out there with 5,000 Instagram followers that are killing it, that are making six figures, right?
Oh, I've heard of those guys too. Absolutely.
And they're real. They exist out there. But if you think about this, you have 35,000 and you are at the forefront of menswear. How much would clothing companies chip in to be part? I look at, because when I look now, this is all a surprise for me that you're feeling that way, but I'm glad that we're being so candid about it and being very public about it. And this needs to be talked about because you have a clothing, you start out as a clothing and you still can go in that niche if you want to. Even if you change it to AM, you still can do brand sponsorships with clothing companies all day long.
What's so funny is I actually just started doing that, and I already have three brand deals because I was forced into. I have to do it. I want this thing to continue, and I got to get over being embarrassed about asking for the money or like the business. Like I can't. Like I want this to survive, and I know it's valuable to people, so I have to get past myself. I have to remove my ego or whatever the hell is restricting me, and think of it as, hey, I need this to survive. And this is what I need to do. So that's so funny that you actually mentioned that, because I literally started that last week, doing that, the uncomfortable, like, hey,
that's awesome.
Like kind of like feeling like I'm begging in a way.
Yes.
It's an ego. I don't know, man. It's like, I don't want to be that guy, but everyone does it. So it's like, and you're not, I don't know. It's so funny.
And some people do it with honor, with conviction, with belief that this is the right thing to do. Like I am helping your brand out by bringing customers to your clothing line, and like that would be silly to think that you don't have the force, the power to bring eyeballs to their clothing. It's just now me on the other hand, that's a different, mine is a cultural heavy platform. It's a little bit tricky to align with certain brands because it's just a very much more broad, and so I deal with that. But when I look at Asian menswear, I'm like, man, that's a perfect niche to be in, it's just so perfect.
Well, I mean, for the longest time, it was so difficult for me to like figure out what the monetization path would be, because again, I must be stubborn or something, but I was like, you know what, I'm not taking any just sort of brands. It has to be this and that. And then obviously that strategy hasn't worked. So it's like, now it's like, you need to just get something going and be happy with it. Don't feel a certain way, because at the end of the day, it's a business transaction, right? They're only going to pay you if they see the value in it. If they do, that means it's a good partnership. It's a good deal. So I'm learning, to finally kind of step out and like really get out there. We'll see how that goes. But I'd love to. I actually, after the podcast, whatever, I'd love to hear about that guy you said with 6,000 followers and what are they doing? Because that's another part that I have trouble with, like the business end of it, right? So that's another thing I'm still like trying to figure out now. I'm always the guy that solves that gap, but then that next level has always been something that I'm not the best at yet. So it's funny that you mentioned that too. And
I could talk about this with you afterwards till we're blue in the face, and I guarantee you, I am the smartest person alive to know what to do. But God. I am not the guy to do my own. I'll give you so badass advice. I'll be like the other chef, like the other side of Chef 2. I'll give you so much pointers. But you lift up my P&L sheet and I'm completely paralyzed. I cannot do my.
That's so crazy.
And I think you're right. It's ego related. It's just ego related. I can't step out and go, okay, well, can I get some money? Because
it's just
a rejection. It's a rejection on myself.
Yeah. So. I even think, again, I think it's the conditioning again, because even in like, I don't know, it might be just me, but in Asian culture, like you don't ever see anyone begging. Like, because I think a lot of ways we tie it to begging, like we're tying to like asking for it, and that's just a weird concept that we can't really. I don't know.
You're right.
Something I'm thinking about. I don't see beggars, and a lot of times in like Asian beggars, or they're never just like, oh, hand me money, or I don't know. It's ingrained in our culture not to do that, or it feels that way in a business sense. I don't know.
Now, when you finally look out one day to the American and global mainstream landscape, what are some of the signs in your brain, in your mind, in your heart that Asian men have finally arrived? What are the metrics?
All right, let me. I think one of the ways is when an Asian guy becomes someone that all races want to emulate. So, example would be we had Jeremy Lin, right? He was pretty big, one of the biggest at the time, or still is, which is crazy because his whole shoot to mainstream media was 10
10
years
years
ago,
ago,
something like that.
2012.
So it's like a Bruce Lee, and then we got a Jeremy Lin, right? It's like it's it's always these gaps. But the problem with Jeremy Lin is he's still very niche. Like the people who wore his jerseys were always just Asian Americans. It wasn't like black kids were out there wearing Jeremy Lin or trying to be, if I think about it in basketball terms, like Kobe, everyone uses Kobe when they shoot. I think the time when an Asian American, I guess, guy is transformed is when he is in mainstream media and every race wants to be him by looking like him, wearing what he wears, or doing those things. And we're not quite there yet. And I think when we have that transformation, even with Simu, I don't see other races besides Asian Americans like really, you got Batman. Everyone wants to be Batman as we were younger, right? Because those are the only heroes. It's just a white guy in a Batman suit. We haven't reached that yet. And I think once we do that, then it changes everything. It changes how we're perceived, because if you're willing to want to be this person, whatever negative stereotypes you have in your mind are gone, right? So
There's an example of men who women like, but not men perhaps wanting to emulate, is BTS, right?
yeah, that's always a conflict.
Yeah,
always a
it's like
conflict.
it's like they've taken over this wonderful landscape of music, and they have a lot of adoring women across the board. I've been to a BTS concert when they were here in LA, and I think that walking out of that concert, I was immediately I was a high, from that experience of just all these women, mainstream, it just felt like they had these sold out nights, and it was like, oh my God, we've arrived. But then I stepped back and I thought, well, do men from other countries, or American men, like you said, want to emulate their look, their feel? It's just for women, right? It's just women want to be like that. And I think like the same way with the Beatles too. Back in the day, I don't think men wanted to be like the Beatles.
Oh, that's a good perspective.
The Beatles were dressed a certain way. It was weird for the time.
Right,
Maybe
right.
it was like a shtick, them dressing up in suits. They were thin guys. But then, the 60s came after that. Everybody's in long hair, and, so things changed, but they were just embodying what women really were into. But that's not what men are into,
It
right?
needs to be both. It needs to be both men and women. That would be the moment where it all works
Really?
out, right? It's
Yeah.
not just, yeah.
This is
And
everyone.
And
Everyone.
maybe BTS becomes the Beatles, where eventually people take on, maybe if fashion goes their way,
Yeah.
and people then okay. But right now, we're not quite there, like
Good point.
yeah, I would
Yeah,
say
men and women. But who's the contender?
that. What do you mean?
Is there a contender? Is there one guy that's leading the pack? It's
I mean, it's Simu. That's our only guy, in my opinion.
What about Henry Golding?
This is always controversial, because there's gonna be like, like I don't care. I account for every Asian man, but no, being that I'm in this on social media and I see these comments, people DM me all the time, like, oh, he's not full Asian. You can't count him because he has features that, a lot of times, like a full Asian wouldn't have. So that's almost like cheating in a way.
Yeah.
So like, I don't care. Like for me, it doesn't matter. But I know for a lot of people, until we have that full Asian guy that represents like is 100%, we won't hear enough, we won't stop hearing it. And even did you know Bruce Lee, like he's not even full Chinese. He's
Yeah.
actually a quarter white.
Totally.
So it's again, I think it's like I think this is like something that like Black America deals with too. Like a lot of the people that are extremely famous they're part white in some way. So it's almost like you need a little bit of white to like bridge that gap. And for Asians, like, well, he's not fully Asian. And then for whites, they think that's like a perfect example of an Asian person, right? So it's like it's very weird.
Yeah, it is. It is very weird. But you take a guy like Prince, right? The musician, and he doesn't fit any stereotypes, but he's just a god in I think both the music world and just the art world. He's just that level of talent. How often and when are we gonna, like, it's like a Bruce Lee, right? Like the level of talent like a Bruce Lee or a Prince to step onto the world stage to be like the most badass in your field.
We need that too.
We need that.
You're right. Because at that point, that's just undeniable.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
a good example would be Shohei Otani. He's Japanese,
Yep.
but he's really, see, if we have someone like him, but he's born and bred in America, Asian American, that could be it. If Shohei was actually born in America, it would be a lot different, where he can resonate with a lot of things that are us growing up in America and things like that. That would be the difference maker, I think, if we had an athlete.
See, that's fucked up because we can't talk about Johnny Juzang, right? Because that's like, whoa,
You know how much hate I get when I post, Black Asian players? They get pissed. And I'm like, dude, like, come on, like we got to get over that. But I get where they're coming from, because a lot of times their athleticism is all because, they'll claim it's Black. And I don't know if there's some science behind it, but it always happens to be like they have they got the height and all this, but trust me, I get sick of like seeing the comments all the time. And there's some guys that are like very toxic. They are like, dude, why'd you post that? Like, get that off the page. So like,
that's fucked up, man.
Yeah. But then it's like, you also have to have empathy for those guys, because they still have the Asian heritage. And sometimes they grew up literally in Asian culture. They're only because they look different from the outside, but inside they're just as Asian as another Asian guy. So it sucks that they're in that weird limbo area where they can't really claim anything. So it's like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the silver lining in all of this is like to think about, I think there's 4% Asian American. I mean, how big are we in the United States?
So 6%, but that's like including
everything, right?
Everything. I think, yeah, just like we're talking about about 4%, I think.
Yeah, we're 6% of this country, and we're demanding that we produce a Prince or a Bruce Lee that's coming out of that 6%. That's a hard ask.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
It's a numbers game, right?
And especially when a lot of us go into these professions that we're not going to be, we're not groomed to be an entertainer or like athlete. We're like, the model minority. Like, you're going to be a doctor. You're going to get education. You're going to go into a safe job, software engineer. So you add that on top of trying to produce this superstar. That's hard to do. Like Jeremy Lin was like a freak of nature, he was also, smart as well. So it's like, but what came out of him was, it's like a freak of nature.
Yeah. And the ability to get to the level of a Jeremy Lin, that took an enormous amount of trust and belief in just faith.
Right. You're absolutely right. He could have quit.
Anytime.
He had a nice backup plan if you wanted.
To Harvard.
Mm-hmm. And that I always think about that. I always wondered how many of those, there's a superstar athlete.
Yeah.
Some guy that could have made it if he was pushed in that direction, but no, he's probably like a vice VP or something now. I 100%, I know there was some superstar that could have had it all, but he just went the other direction because we're kind of, that's that's what we're conditioned or like we're taught to go into. I wholeheartedly agree, or feel like there is a superstar somewhere out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Or something like that. Yeah.
Now, what are some of the hardest parts of the podcast that, what's are the biggest challenges that you find doing the podcast work?
Still today is just getting over my nerves, honestly. Being able to, I guess, speak freely too, like we talked about, like just speaking your mind and then not really overthinking. Because a lot of times it's weird, like as I'm speaking, I'm thinking. Yeah. And that's very bad when you're having a conversation. You're not fully in the moment. And I do that a lot. I'm like, I'll say something, but then I'm still thinking of what I'm saying. So that's, how can you get a thought out if you're also thinking while speaking? It's such a weird thing.
Yeah. Let me give you a little bit of advice. The only way to get over that is to do more of these.
Yeah.
Just fucking do
One
more.
day at a time. Yeah.
Just keep at it. I talk to other Vietnamese podcasters. There's Tracy Mang Nguyen, and there's Randy Kim. He's Khmer Vietnamese, and now there's you. So now that I know that you are existing in this space as podcasting, I beg you to put out more and never stop, Yeah. And so this is why. Eventually, in 5 years from now, if there's 30 more people like us, the amplification process will be magnified exponentially. And that's the only way we're going to inspire younger generations of Asian Americans or even globally to go out and do their shit. Because the conversation that we just had this last hour involves a lot of we're talking about like our deepest fucking problems on the creator track, right?
Yeah.
And so how I think other people hear it is they get empathize and then we're like, okay, all right, I know what the pitfalls are. I'm going to sidestep these pitfalls and I'm going to go for it. And that inspiration is important because, it will sprout more possibility of princes or Bruce Lee's that are afraid to go out and do it.
Right. You're absolutely right. And a lot of things we talk about are things that we had to learn through the years. And a lot of times if someone's younger listening, they can just cut that learning curve right away, get to that. Something that I wish I would have heard, growing up, like, oh, this is something that I'm struggling with. The whole time I thought it was just me. Then I'll learn like this is like a community thing where like if I would have learned that early on, then I could have been able to like figure out what I can do to kind of get out of that mindset. So that's very true. And that's why I'm back. I'm so happy. I find that I enjoy it when I'm like engaging with the community, doing these podcasts. I love listening to these stories. Like it's so rewarding to me. Now I just got to figure out, okay, how to monetize so that I can continue doing it and getting better and better. So that's kind of where I'm at, trying to figure out my North Star and then finding a way to make it all sustainable.
Yeah, I think you're well on your way. I had a lot of questions prepared and, I think we hit on a lot of them. And the beauty of like today was there's a lot of free flow because, you came with it and I came with it and we have a lot of problems that we brought. And I think those things are more interested than a bunch of, customized questions that I had laid out for you. So
wow, this is great. I feel like it's so much nicer when someone is interviewing me. And I find that when people do ask me the questions, I'm pretty open.
Yeah.
Even on my podcast, like I'm willing to talk about so many different things that I wouldn't be like, I would think about it before I spoke. But here it's weird. When people ask me these questions, I just normally just let loose and just tell how it is. It's so funny. Maybe the pressure's off because I don't have to handle like the production process and make sure that the episode is well and things like that. So
that's definitely a big, that bears down the weight on the host. It's
that's why you're doing an amazing job. I mean, this is why, right? 200 episodes later, and you also got a really nice voice. So I feel like you have that studio podcasting voice. So
thank you, Mike. I really appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate your time today. It's always a gift to have young Vietnamese talent in the world, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. And let's keep it going and touch bases often.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure after this we should talk.
All right, awesome, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. The Vietnamese is produced by Brittany Tran. Special thanks to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can subscribe, like, and comment. Please rate and give us a review wherever you find our podcast.